people have complicated the skill into like super technical, and some LLMs try to take ownership of a concept they've created. Ultimately, it is just an instructions file. Create this image, then there can be another skill saying that automatically upload it to LinkedIn or Luma. So a lot of, you can cascade multiple of these skills, so your entire workflow kind of gets automated. You don't have to say anything else. The entire process and structure actually gets automated for you. Okay, thanks a lot for joining yet another session from AppliedAI Club. I see some new faces. I'll probably do a little bit of introduction about what we do here at the community. So there's a community called AppliedAI Club. So we've been running this for the last year, slightly more than a year, like 14 months or so. The community is actually focused on builders and operators, people who are not students and people who are not typically engineers, right? But apart from this, any operator or a builder or a founder who wants to get into AI is a persona that we actually focus on. And our focus is to how do we, bring together a group so that we can all learn from each other. Nobody's an expert with AI. Some of us know, some of us have tried enough stuff more than the others, and this is a forum where everybody can actually share their learnings with each other. So the main community is at AppliedAI.club. If you're not part of it, and if you'd like to be part of the future events, so please sign up over there. We'll add you to the community. So what we do here is we do a couple of things. The main thing that we do is the weekly sessions. Well, you are in one of those weekly sessions. So this typically happens on a Saturday. So we either bring an expert, external expert, or somebody from the community will actually come up. We'll talk about a specific concept around AI. And this goes on for an hour. This typically gets recorded, and all our past sessions are on YouTube. They're available for free. You can actually go, check it out. The second thing we do is what we call study groups. So study groups are a self-learning mechanism where a group of people come together and they learn how to build with AI. So that's also something that we do. So in fact, currently there is one study group that is going on, which is related to building finance agents. So we will have a demo of the demo day of that study group next week. So a bunch of folks who have relatively no experience with AI have been able to build these products and will showcase it to the rest of the community. So that's also something that we'll actually do. Yeah, so that's a bit about the community. If you're interested, again, just go there and sign up. I will, review and I'll add it to the community. So, super. So please note that this session is being recorded. So if there is any sensitive information that actually gets shared, let me know so that our team can cut it out before we post it on YouTube, because this is going to go on YouTube. Okay. Now, with that introduction, let's get started with today's session. So today's session is on building AI agents. AI agent skills. So skills is a kind of a revolutionary concept which has kind of changed the way a lot of us actually work on, and is also changing the way how software is actually getting built in general. But it is a very, very simple concept for us to learn, not complex at all. And it is really good for somebody who is not even technical to kind of understand how this actually works, because it's going to help you in your day-to-day life quite a bit. Right. So before we get there, I want to ask a couple of questions so that we fine-tune this session accordingly. You should see a poll that has actually come up. If you can answer that, that will be great. There are 3 questions. Just be honest and answer it so that, the rest of the session we can fine-tune accordingly.
Can't see any poll. Where is the poll? It's in the chat.
You should see a screen pop up. I see people.
Yeah. I can see it's on the top. Poll is in progress, but I don't know. Yes. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. While this is happening, some housekeeping. So this session we will end sharp at like 11:10. So we will leave the last 10 minutes for Q&A, but in between also, because it's a kind of like a semi-working session, so I will give enough space for you guys to ask questions if we have any. Right? But if it is going to take too long, we'll cut short and we'll move on the questions towards it. Okay, so about 80% have participated. Okay, I think we have a representative test.
What's your primary, closest primary?
Okay. So most of them are PMs, non-technical, which is great, which is a target that we want to focus on. Claude, this is lovely. Good to see all of this. Most of you use it as an assistant. Okay, lovely. All right. I think a few of you are already experts. I think I can see some of the experts actually here. I'm not sure what you are doing in this session, but if there is some additional information that you can actually add to the rest of the group, feel free, right? But I think we have a good enough answer. So most of you folks are from the non-technical background, mostly on the business side or PM design. These are the two main cohorts. I see most of you use Claude, which is very interesting. I did not expect that. And third is most of you use it as an assistant, which is expected. Okay, all right, sounds good. So I'm going to end the poll and we will get started with this session. Okay, so okay, so setting some expectations on what you can do at the end of the session, right? So at the end of the session, what I would recommend is you have the Saturday and Sunday. Try to create a simple skill to automate any of the common workflows that you have in your day-to-day, right? So that's what you should expect to, get to by the end of the session. So let's see how we can all get there. So first, I'm going to give some introduction about what a skill is, what the hell are we actually talking about.
Nanda, bolo.
So folks, just mute yourself if you are speaking. So if you're not actively speaking here. Okay, so all right, so we're talking about like agent skills. So the way skills, these are like fancy terms, which are obviously easy to understand once you know what they're actually talking about, but don't worry about the terms. I think it's more important for you to understand the underneath, the concept that is underneath. Okay. Now, what is a skill? So if you are in business, which most of you are, and other few folks are on like in product or design, all of you would have heard of this term called SOP, which is your standard operating procedure. It is simply a process flow, how your particular process is actually done. Like for example, if you think about how do you send an email to a customer, so there is a certain process, right? So you can't simply use unparliamentary words or like just like how you talk to a friend. You have like a little bit of company brand voice plus your what do you call it? Some respectful aspect that you actually put in place so that how you respond to a customer. If you're doing a sales deck, for example, so then you have what is your brand guidelines, what kind of, whether you have a lot of pictures or do you have a lot of text. So all of these things are all in place. If you have finance, let's say accounts, like let's say you're processing an invoice, how do you process the invoice? Like what kind of amount do you get approval for? Like what kind of expenses are actually approved versus not approved? For example, the team goes out for a drink, probably you wouldn't approve that. So these are very specific to how the individual companies work and individual person as you also will work. Okay. So that whatever your personal workflow is, so that is what we actually call as skill. Okay. So nothing fancy. I'll give you a few examples, right? Number one is like today, what we will see a simple sales research before every meeting. Let's say you have a sales meeting that is coming up, you're meeting with a large client. You want to do some background research. Typically, you have a team who goes, looks at their LinkedIn, looks at the company's LinkedIn, how many people are they hiring, what kind of products do they sell, all of these things, put together a doc so that you can read before you get to a meeting. Okay. Now that is your personal process. You will have your own structure. Depending on the company or the product you are actually selling, those aspects will change. So you need to have a custom sales research is made for you, right? So that is, for example, a skill. You can generate a skill for this. So this is something we'll try to do today in the call. The second one is, let's say, a marketing asset. Now you go to Instagram or LinkedIn, every company has its own type of marketing asset. What is the tone they use? What is the colors they use? What is the pictures? Do they use pictures? Whether it is a founder speaking or is it like some random animations that you actually put in place? All of these things are different for every company. Now, can you actually create it? Right? If you simply go and ask an LLM saying that, hey, create a marketing material for me, it will create something random which may not suit your particular requirements. So that is something you can actually create. The daily performance email you want to send, like for example, you want to send to your team how they are performing, what to focus on, what not to do today. So these kind of things, you can automate that. Daily brief. This is something I do personally, which is every day morning an LLM actually sends me This is your calendar. These are the things that you have, and this is how you actually structure the rest of it. And do that. Now, there is one common aspect to all of this, which is all of these are repeatable. If it is a one-off thing which you are actually doing, so let's say a customer asks for saying that, hey, like, how do you actually do pricing for me? And let's say that is custom to a particular client. What you might do is you can just go to Claude or ChatGPT, you ask the question, give all the inputs that you have, and it will give you, hey, this is a pricing structure that might actually work. That is a one-off. And in this case, I'm assuming that you'll not repeat the same pricing for all customers. But let's say you're doing the same exercise for more than 2 customers. It makes sense for you to just convert into a skill, which is a process, so that you can just run it with Claude every single time. So you don't have to give all the same instructions every single time. So that's the concept over here. I'll give you another example. So this deck that you actually see here, so this deck is also created by Claude, right? I didn't even write a single sentence. And this uses a skill that I have, which is the, what do you call, the color, the font that you actually use, what is the tone that you actually use. So everything is created, everything is fed into Claude already as a skill. So every time I want to create a new deck, it just takes a few minutes. In fact, I did this deck in like less than 2 minutes just before this call, right? So that's all the time it actually takes. It's not about saving time. It is about, you don't have to give the same instructions over and over again, and you can make it just that the way you treat this is you treat it like an employee. You have an assistant who built this for you. How would you give instruction to the assistant so that they know exactly what you want? A human being can build context over a period of time. How do you give that personal context to AI is via skills. Okay. Now, what does a skill look like? Skill is nothing but a text file. Okay, there is nothing else. It is simply a text file. Okay, so there is this kind of text file. So I will show you example. So there is this concept of text, like when you type, like there is Google Docs where you can write text. You can write text in a notepad. You can do all of these things. But there is specific format you actually write text in, which is called Markdown. Okay. Markdown is an easy way to, it is one of the ways of like writing text and giving styles to different text. For example, if I do hash and space, it becomes a title. If I do 2 hash, then it becomes a H2 heading. If I do 3 hash, sorry, now I did 4 hash, so H4 heading. Okay, so if I do tilde and it becomes strike through. So it's an easy way for people to, it is typically used in the technical documentation where people used to write all of these things. LLM is good at reading text. Okay, so we as operators, we are used to, taking this, going and highlighting, changing this, etc. But LLM is more used to writing text. So LLM, the way the skills actually get formed is by using this text file, which is in a markdown format. It is not too difficult. You can just give the instructions to Claude to kind of write all of this. So you don't have to learn anything new. The markdown is something that you don't have to learn, but just know that underneath it uses something called a markdown file. Okay, so a skills is basically a file. And how does this file look? The file has 2 major components. One is you put like 3 dashes and say what is the name. Name, for example, here is, let's say, sales research. And what is the description? Okay, description is, this is this skill will have instructions how to search call for applied studio. Okay, simple as that. So that's your instructions. So these are the mandatory components. And below this, you simply write down the skill, what you actually want. So for example, I'll say how to do sales research. Then you say, like, find the company's LinkedIn, founders LinkedIn, blah, 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 whatever things you actually want, number of employees you have. You just provide all the instructions. So this is basically a skill file. There is nothing else. So it's a standard file that you actually create for any of the process that you actually want to do, and give it to an LLM and say, like, just these are your instructions to do this job. Just follow these instructions. Okay, and this works with any LLM. You don't necessarily have to create a skill file also, to be frank. You can create it in any file, put it in any folder, just send it to the LLM saying that this is the process for you to follow, it will follow. Okay. Any questions so far in understanding what a skill is?
Bala, I had a question.
Ah.
So if you have like a multi-agent workflow for personal workflow, how would you make this choice between what would you tag as a skill versus what would be an agent, and how would you like assign a specific skill to an agent? Or today, as things stand, do we even have to do all of this, or everything can be on like a instructions markdown file or something like that for your personal workflows?
Yeah, see, the instructions markdown is as simple as a skill. A skill is basically a specific, okay, probably it makes sense to give a little bit of a hierarchy, right? Now, I'm sure all of you also know this a little bit. There is something called a system prompt, which is the primary instructions you give to an LLM, saying that this is how I actually work. These are the standard steps you're supposed to follow. Okay. Now, that is typically in a file called agent.md, which will be whichever tool you're actually using. So all of those things will actually be present. Now, let's say this is your personal assistant. Okay, now let me take my example. So I use Claude for obviously writing code. I use Claude for creating decks like this. I take the video of this sessions, and Claude is the one who actually cuts and edits the video form. I write content with it. I write what you call send emails. I do all of these things. Now, if I simply provide all these instructions within this file, the file will actually become super duper big. Okay, obviously it'll eat a lot of tokens. And it'll be like super overwhelming for Claude. And especially when you give a lot of instructions, they actually tend to fail. Okay, so the whole point, the reason why actually skills came about is that instead of giving one global instructions, can I actually split this into context-based instructions? For example, when you skill 1 talks about when you write content. So when you write content, this is how you actually do it. Okay. Skill 2, when you create deck. Okay. Skill 3 is when you analyze finance statements. This is when you create marketing assets, right? So basically what I'm doing is I'm splitting my entire instructions into specific skill files. Okay. The way it actually works is, now let's open, let me see if I open Claude. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. So let me see if I open Claude. Claude, when I actually start a new chat, it does not know whether I'm actually going to do content writing or deck or whatever it actually is. Okay, so the way it actually happens is that when I say that, hey, what meetings do I have today? Okay, so Claude will know this because I've connected my calendar, right? Now, with what actually happens is Claude will have a global set of instructions on what are the what does Bala do, and like how am I supposed to work for Bala? That is the primary instruction, and you will put that in something called agent.md. Very, very simple trivia, right? Then when I say something like this, Claude, what it'll actually do is it'll go and try to look at all the different skills that it actually has. Okay, it knows that we have 4 skills, and what it does is it only reads the top name and description. It reads the name and description of all the skills and say like, hey, is there a skill that I can actually use to do this? So it will find the corresponding skill, which say checking calendar. It will take the corresponding skill and it will only read that entire skill ka context. So the instructions can be specific, etc. So basically what you're doing is you're splitting into multiple separate instructions. Does it make sense?
It does. So one added question to it. So let's assume you're working with multiple tools on your workspace, and you have MCPs for some of it. And so on your skills is where you tell that for this particular kind of activity, you would use this MCP. So that kind of it doesn't have to make that choice now. It just goes to that skill file, lesser context, right, for it to make that decision.
Yeah. Sure. So
Okay.
yes. So the skill file also has what tools you can actually use. Tools is basically your Your Gmail is a tool, your calendar is a tool. It programmatically figures out a way, how do I access these tools? Your Jira is a tool. You can create whatever tools you actually want, right? So that's how the whole thing actually works. So I think there is one question on whether they have what is agent.md. Okay, agent.md is very, very simple, Shmir. So if I go to Claude, I haven't used Claude in a bit, so you guys have to forgive me if I go searching settings, general. So there is something called instructions for Claude. I'm sure that I know there is one in ChatGPT, and there is one for Gemini, etc. So these are like global instructions which will personalize that agent's experience for you. Okay. Now this is what we are saying agent.md. It can also be put in a file, but if you don't know how to use it in a file, like don't worry about it. It doesn't matter, right? I will probably show you my agent.md. You don't have to know any of these guys, but I'm just showing it for example. So my agent.md actually talks about how to use things for development, how do you use for work, how do you use when you do design, how do you write documentation. So these are like very, very simple set of instructions, which is applicable across all the work that I actually do. Okay, so when Claude actually starts working on any task, it needs to understand, for example, quality, like what does quality actually means for Bala. So this is something you can actually personalize. That is my file, but you can use, like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, or any other tool you have. They all have this, it's what do you call things exposed. You can actually go and add your own specific set of instructions. So that's what Claude at least. Okay, so Amit has a question on, are those separate instructions for different skills, etc. I will talk about all of those. All right, so let's get to yeah. So I simply asked like, what meetings do I have today? It went to my calendar. It figured out I have one webinar, and it also gave me a link. Basically, it's able to fetch from my calendar. Okay, so let me see if there is anything else. Yeah, let's get to let's build one, right? I think it will solve a lot of questions that you guys actually have. And after we build a simple skill, then we will get to more questions. Okay. Now, the simplest thing that we are actually going to do is I have in my calendar a few sales calls I've scheduled, dummy sales calls, which is there for next week. Okay. And the way I have done this is I've connected my calendar. I think it is here. You go to connect your apps, and I've connected my Google. Where is Google Calendar? Yeah, I've connected my Google Calendar to a dummy account, right? So this doesn't have any sensitive information. So now that the calendar is connected, so when you connect a calendar like this is called tools, right? People talk about MCP, people talk about like tools, etc. In simpler terms, just think of these as AI has a way of programmatically accessing those different platforms that you have. So this has become one of those tools. Okay. Now, when I said what meetings do I have today, it basically said it loaded a tool called my calendar and it fetched the result. Okay, simple. Now I will say, hey, what sales meetings? Okay, this is something you guys all might use. Yeah, so it's accessing calendar. This, I'm sure all of you would have actually done it. So it accesses different tools, it fetches all this information. And right now what we're doing is we're doing this one-off. We're not like doing the skill or process automation. We're simply doing this as like a one-off. Okay. Let's wait for the results to come. Yeah, so it created like there is one called, these are all fake guys. So I have one with Haptic, one with Misho, one with Blinkit, and one I have with Zerodha, and I have a few. Okay, so I'm gonna say let's do a sales research for what is the first call? You can do the discovery call with Zerodha. use AppliedAI Studios. Let's see. Studio.AppliedAI. So this is kind of like how you do one of, I'm sure this is like a normal workflow that all of you actually do. I'm going to keep it very simple because otherwise this goes on for like half an hour where you kind of make it like super customized. Yeah, the process, this should remain the same, whether you're using Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT, etc. Or if you're using terminal or a window like this, it shouldn't matter. Okay. So I'm a big proponent of using like terminal even for non-technical folks. We've done some videos in the past on why that is important, but for this use case, it shouldn't matter.
Bala, can I ask a question?
Sure, boss.
So you demonstrated right now a connection to Google Calendar, right? I'm
Yeah.
assuming it would work the same way with Outlook and Microsoft Calendars as well.
Yes. See, the few things is why is Claude having a problem? Okay. Let me see the browser one. 1 second, I'll just respond.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Okay. So, so your question is, see, the way I did this connection is basically all these platforms, all these platforms actually support something called
Okay, got it, understood.
connectors. So that's what I actually used.
Right.
But essentially, you can connect to anything, right? For example,
Perfect.
What we do is I connect. One of the examples I have done is I have connected Claude to Gemini. See, Claude is very good at doing all the things that I actually wanted to do. This is my go-to platform.
Right.
But Gemini is very good at creating images because it has Nano Banana.
Right.
Okay. So what I simply asked is saying that, hey, I want to give you instructions. You can use Nano Banana to automatically create images for me.
Okay.
Okay. So then all you have to do is simply tell Claude, hey, don't you want to use Claude to create images using Nano Banana? Can you create a skill and tell me if you need anything from me? Simple as that. Obviously, you can do a little bit more, but if you don't know anything about how to connect any of these tools, all you have to do is simply give instructions like this.
Sure.
Okay.
Understood.
It exactly tell you how do I connect. So this way, you can connect to your what you call like other platforms like Nano Banana. You can connect to Linear. You can connect to Jira. You can connect to Microsoft. You can do all of these things. And even if natively these tools are not available in any of these platforms,
right,
it'll give you the instructions on how do you actually connect those. So that's how you do.
If we can just one more question, and I hope this is not digressing too much, but what you said right now about connecting to Gemini just sparked a thought in my mind, which is, would it be more prudent then to actually, if we are using Google, right, and any of the Google services, to maybe at a fundamental level connect Claude with Gemini, and then through that perhaps use any of the Google services? Like, does that make sense?
You can. So see, it depends on what use cases you use it for. I'll tell you the use case I use it for. Right?
Sure.
So when you guys join this session, so you would have seen the Luma invite. Yeah. So there's a Luma invite that created. So this Luma invites image that you actually see. So I create these images both for Luma and LinkedIn, right? And I don't want to spend time like fine tuning these images, etc. So I have a Claude skill where I simply tell it, hey, can you create an image for this week? I have this event. This is the topic. This is the speaker. Here is what the time. I just give it as an instruction.
Understood.
Claude generates this entire image automatically, including the alignment, including putting my photo over there, right? Everything is, the instruction is created by Claude, and Claude sends it to Nano Banana with specific instructions, and the image comes as an output form.
Got it. Okay.
Right?
Understood.
So it's one interesting way of kind of like doing all of this.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, there is, see that you can also like cascade multiple skills. So you can have a primary skill saying that, hey, like create this image. Then there can be another skill saying that automatically upload it to LinkedIn or Luma. So you can cascade multiple of these skills. So your entire workflow kind of gets automated, right? And next week we will talk about, so not next week, the week after, we will do another session where we will analyze something called a finance agent, which is built by Claude. Okay, where an entire data modeling, so basically a DCF cash flow modeling can be done by Claude by itself. And it is fairly accurate. So that is something we'll actually go through and understand this concept in detail, how far it can actually go. But in simple terms, any workflow you have, you should be able to do. Okay, see, now we have a basic, discovery that is actually done and gives you all of this. Now, typically what I would do is I would go and push back a little bit on, like what do I sell? No, this pitch is not right. Or this is what I wanted to take away from the meeting. I will do a lot of back and forth or like half an hour. And you should do this for half an hour to kind of fine tune this output. But due to lack of time, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to focus on creating a skill. Now, this is a one-off thing. You sit in front of a laptop, you do this, you go back and forth with the assistant and you do this work by itself. Now, if I'm going to do this for every meeting, and I will probably do this like 15 minutes before every meeting, I can't just go sit in front of Claude and do this every time. So this is where I can convert this into a skill. Now, the way I convert into the skill is I can open a notepad, I can do all of this, whatever I'm actually writing. Yes, that is one way to do it, but it'll be a very inefficient way to do it. What I would actually do is ask Claude itself to create a skill for us. So, hey, I want to structure this skill for all my when I run the skill, it should take my upcoming sales call from calendar and run the research. Okay. So, yeah, that's it. And you can actually do this in ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. The instructions are the same. The AI actually understands how to create a skill better than we can manually write because it covers a lot of edge cases also. Typically, what I would also do is ask me if there are any questions. So this is a very, very powerful element because these LLMs, they try to, try to adhere to your instructions too much, but it always asks 3 or 4 questions. And it highlights some, gaps that you actually have in your instructions, which are not very clear, which will make this fine-tuned a little bit more. But again, we're not going to go there. We're just trying to create a skill here. A couple of other questions. You are using Opus 4.7 by default. Does it not eat up a whole lot of tokens? Yes, it does. But I've seen that on a net basis, it's actually much better because it makes lesser errors for me. So first time right for me is a lot more important because I see the whole thing, the way I'm trying to set up my entire infrastructure is I don't have to be physically present for Claude to do work. A lot of my setup is actually set up that way. That means I'll always go for like the best models so that the work done is actually right. And in a lot of cases, when I actually work, if I'm working on something big, once Claude creates a plan, I have a way where Claude asks ChatGPT 5.5 to review the plan. Right? Again, I'm spending tokens on both, but I know that the output will catch things which a single model will not catch. So everything is kind of optimized towards that. Yeah, I do run out of tokens pretty fast actually. Mamta asks, can this be done in Copilot too, Bala? Yes, absolutely, Mamta. So yeah, you use Gemini or ChatGPT or anything, so they know how to do this. And even if you realize that the whole skill generation is not working, you don't have to worry. What you do is you ask it to write these instructions to a file. You call the file whatever you want. And when you do this research, tell Claude that, hey, the instructions are in this file, or Claude or whatever LLM you're using, instructions are in this file, just use this file. They will work.
Thanks. Thank you for that.
Varshal, is skills more useful for automating internal use cases or doing something repeatable, reliably, like a workflow also recommended using a skill or platforms like N8 and Zapier, etc., considering audit trail and iterations? So, Varshal, since skills actually came about, I have completely stopped using N8N or other platforms because the value of actually N8N has become a lot more complex to use when you think of simply writing a text file, right? So it becomes much easier. So I would say try to go for try to learn how to use skills. It is much faster and much easier than using an 8 and Zapier, for example. And the one thing with skills is that reliability of the models is actually important. As long as you're using a decent model, it doesn't make any many bugs. I think you are actually okay. Right? Start with simple skills. There are ways to make it much more reliable, and especially with newer models, actually they make less errors on hallucination. So I would highly recommend that use skills for pretty much all of these, and both for internal workflows or also for something external, some part of your work. Right? You shouldn't worry about that. Okay, I have a few more questions, but I'm going to quickly run through the result. Okay, skill package. Here is what is inside and how it will behave. Rules of meetings from So basically, it has written a file. Is there a way I can see the file? Let's just open this. Okay. It's not very big, right? So let me open it in a. Okay. So if you guys remember, I said there is a name and description on top, which is the standard structure. These two are important for an LLM to read. Okay. If you are automatically asking it to add it as a skill. Then it talks about apply hey, what is the context? This is the main body. This is basically the instruction it actually reads. Okay. What is a core principle? This good discovery call brief is not a Wikipedia dump on a prospect. It surfaces 2 or 3 things that change the pitch. Unusual buyer profile, the inherited tech stack, all these things it built it by itself because I didn't give any instruction. So it tried to figure out what is the best possible outcome. Ideally, all of this will derive from your voice. So spend a lot of time with LLM, ask it a cross question. That is what actually enriches, and that actually compounds quite a bit. So spend a lot of time providing in very clear, very specific instructions. Okay. So now let's get to the workflow. So the workflow is first identify the target call, which is pull up the meetings from the Google Calendar and figure out what is the next one. Second is try to extract the information from the calendar, then research the prospect, Twitter, LinkedIn, blog posts, all of these using web research tools. Then pull AppliedAI Studio's current positioning. You go to AppliedAI Studio and try to see if the website has changed, your positioning has changed, what is the value, etc. And finally, create a brief and what is the template for the brief. Now here you can tell what kind of template you actually want. For example, you are selling something like security. You would say, are there any security incidents in the last 6 months? Right? That's a big selling point for you. So you can customize the structure according to what you actually want. And there is an example that is added. It gives you something called references. The references are basically example briefs so that the LLM can actually understand how it actually looks. Quality bar, this came from my primary instruction because I said quality is very important, and what does quality mean for Bala is something that I have actually given my primary instructions. So to use that to understand what does quality actually looks like, right? So when the user wants something else, what should he actually do? An important guardrails. So all of these things it has added. So this is basically a skill file, right? Now, once I add this to the library in Claude, I can go back to saying that. So this time I don't have to say, pull the meeting from the calendar, pull the, do the research this way. How do you want the output to be, etc., etc. I can simply invoke the skill. Can you research the upcoming call with, who was the other person we wanted to talk? Oh, yeah, Blinkit founder. See, it said I've identified a skill to prepare for the Blinkit call. Okay, so then it loaded the skill called AppliedAI Discovery Prep, which had the entire set of instructions. It just runs the whole discovery process using the workflow that is actually present over. Okay, simple as that. Now, every time you want to do a research for any call, you can simply say, hey, run the research. You don't have to say anything else. The entire process and structure actually gets automated for you. And anytime you see that the output is not so great and you want to update it, you want to change something because there will always be changes, you simply provide an instruction saying that, boss, this outcome is not so great, just change this and add it to the original skill. Right? So the skill will actually get updated. Any questions? Does it make sense?
So, Bala, have you automated this entire, improving of the skill workflow that, as you're working through, you have some kind of automation which goes and updates your instructions or your skill files and all that just by continuously learning, or do you have to like say it every time you
Yeah.
want to do it?
So the LLMs are not there where you want to run automatic self-improvements. There are a few platforms I know who are actually trying to do that. But the way I do this is I have skills which actually run on this repeatable process, right? Now, every month, I ask another review agent to go review this particular skill and the output and provide suggestions on what has actually worked and what has not worked and what are we missing. Because every skill has a goal. For example, if I'm doing a meeting research, then I look at the meeting outcomes and transcript of those meetings. Is it actually helpful? Right? So now I can feed the transcript, look at the skill and say, what should I actually update? So this is like a one-time thing I do every month for most of the skills that I actually have. So that's how the skill actually gets improved. And sometimes it's very obvious when you see the result, it's like, what bullshit it is. Like, I just want to go update a few things. So that also happens. Yeah, there is a concept of this continuous updation that is actually happening in some places, but in my opinion, it's still not like very, very clear. Yeah. How did I? Oh yeah, I missed this part. So Amit asks, how did you upload the skill file? I perhaps missed it. So if I generated in Claude, there was a button, Amit. Basically, it says add it to the skill file, right? So that is how it is. If you are using any, even Gemini has an interface where you can actually add this. ChatGPT, I'm not sure, I haven't used it in a while, but I think they also support something like this, right? If you are using like code interfaces, I will see if I have any. Yeah, so basically if you have like a folder, you put the skills under specific folders on top. So you typically have a Claude.md or whatever, you can put the skills under there. So that also is possible. Right, but I don't think you should worry about this. This is not the audience for this. So I don't want to scare all of you. Think of it as like a file. The file should be accessible to the LLM. Simple as that. So these interfaces by default provide the space where you can actually go and add. Basically, you can go to customize and you can create, these are tools, skills. You can just add a skill over here, right? Add a skill or upload a skill. You can do all of this in Claude. There are similar spaces in Gemini also. So you can do that one also. But worst case, if you're seeing that it is not picking up, just add it, create a file in your local folder, drag and drop it saying that this is the instruction or this is a skill file. It'll work. You don't have to worry too much about it. Okay. Given the platforms like LinkedIn X restrict bot scraping, how does a skill gets latest post from the meeting invitee and analyzes them? So Virtual, the way it works is that it uses, there are some APIs which actually provide this. I think they use that. If you're too focused on X, it makes sense to connect, ask Claude to or any of the LLMs to connect to Grok APIs, which can actually analyze this Twitter feeds and give you results. LinkedIn, there are some open source tools which are actually available. If you want reliable information from, not open source, sorry, paid tools which are actually available. If you want reliable LinkedIn scraping, you can use that also. Okay, somebody pasted something very large. What is the best practice for bundling instructions? Should we add multiple distinct instructions inside agent skill, split them up? If I'm building a content creator agent, should I create separate skills? Skill 1 for generating scripts, skill 2 for voice overs, and skill 3 for visual elements. Actually, so it depends, Sheikh. So you can if it's a large enough skill, split it. If it is a small instruction, just keep it. Like what we have seen here is a small enough instruction, so we can keep it in a single file. But in your case, let's say for content generation, so we have one for content generation, so we have multiple skills for that. Again, one for voiceover, one for SEO, AEO, one for just creating the content, etc. Because that way the context becomes very easier, and you can call one skill from another skill also. So that also is something that you can actually do. Again, once you start using all these options, will open up, and you can do like more and more complex stuff. Will an index help the agent dynamically locate the relevant context and avoid reading the entire file, ultimately saving token costs? Or will it still consume the same amount of token regardless? Actually, so if you add it as a skill, it only reads the top name and description. So it knows what that skill is for. So it doesn't read the rest of the body. So that way you'll, and only if the skill is useful, it has to use the skill, then it will go read the entire file. So the token consumption will actually be much lesser that way. Nihar asks, how do you give meeting notes to the agent? Is Claude connected to the drive and given the link to the meeting recordings? That is a first question. So what I use is, I use Granola, and I have Granola connected to my, it's a slightly complex setup. I use Granola. Granola, you can connect to Claude directly to pull the meeting notes. That is the easiest way. What I do is I have Granola connected to my, or you can connect to Fathom or Zoom or whatever it actually is. I connect it to my CRM. So I use Attio as my CRM. And I have Claude connected via an API to Attio. So whenever I run a particular skill, my Claude will pull the latest updates from the CRM about, is there an email, is there a conversation, is there a meeting recording? So all of the information gets pulled and it uses that information over there. So that's how I have connected, but there is no one way. There is no one recommended way. You can even copy paste the entire transcript here. So a lot of things, what we do is in external meetings, face-to-face meetings, I have my voice recorder opened. It runs through hours of conversations. I get that, I put that file in Google Gemini, which will give you a diarization transcript, like every single word that is actually spoken. It is very, very good. And once the entire conversation comes as text, then I paste that in Claude. I put it in a file and saying that this is the conversation, entire conversation. Can you parse and create a summary? So that happens over there, right? So you can do multiple ways. This second question: how does the agent get access to all the skills and their outcomes? The outcomes will be different in different threads, right? Yes. See, skill basically is a workflow, right? It ideally should give you a largely deterministic outcome. Like for example, if I'm using this research skill, it should give approximately the same type of outcome in all the cases. So for one conversation, I might do research, which is one skill. But in the second conversation, I might actually do something like sending a proposal, like create a deck, which will be a different skill. Like how do you create a deck is something that will be like completely different skill, right? So the LLM will automatically choose the right skill depending on the context that you're actually working on, right? Hope that answers the question. Suraj, yes.
Hey, I didn't have access to the chat for some reason, so I thought I'll just raise hand and ask. So, are all these skills agnostic of which type of LLM you're using, like Sonnet or Haiku or Opus?
Actually, it is because people have complicated the skill into like super technical, and some LLMs try to take ownership of a concept they've created. Ultimately, it is just an instructions file.
Yep.
Right? A very, very clear instructions file. So even if you don't add it to Claude or Gemini or whatever, you can put the instructions in let's say a text file, give it to the LLM saying that this is the instruction, just follow the instructions and do this job for me. It will work. So it is independent of these different platforms. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Got it. But when you're running your flow, I know you personally said that you run everything using Opus 4.7.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a capability at all to split, hey, when I'm running this skill, this skill may just be, text editing or making a presentation. So you may not need Opus. Is there a way to fork your, tasks so that, you have like a planning task, but then when it's executing a particular skill, that can be done in a different,
You can, but I don't know whether automatic selection of different LLMs is possible. I know somebody told me that it is, but I have not explored it too much, to be frank. I run pretty much. So what I do is, in case of, so I also run some Chinese LLMs, okay, for some smaller tasks, heavier tasks, basically, like some heavier tasks, but dumber tasks, right? So I use some Chinese LLMs. So what I do is I instruct Claude saying that, hey, this particular process, you run it with this LLM, and this is how you access the LLM. So I've given instructions. So it does that. So you can be a lot more creative with this, and when you use more and more, it will kind of like open up all the things that you can actually do.
Got it. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, so I think here's the question I answered. Yashvir has asked, how do we create a skill? Should we ask Claude only to create a skill for the task that we want to achieve? So Yashvir, so yeah, like the simple framework is, think about a job that you're actually doing, do the job with the LLM, like figure out what the good outcome looks like, take your time to kind of like do the entire job. Then simply instruct Claude or Gemini saying that, hey, like whatever we have done for this particular job, can you create a skill file? It will create a beautiful skill file. If there are any feedback, you can give a feedback and goes on. So that's a very, very simple way to kind of achieve all of this. Okay, Priyanka, helpful session. I was able to figure out how using Claude to make images. Lovely. Keshavan asks how to use skill differently to work scheduler. Context, Zoho books reconciliation, GL level using co-work scheduler versus creating a skill. Plus connected to similar set of activities that is going to periodically. Which one is better, and any rationale that you can actually add? See, when you use co-work scheduler, you basically provide a set of instructions on what needs to be done. Skill is basically the instructions, right? So you can also schedule a skill. You can create a skill saying that, hey, this is how you analyze my books, and this is how you actually do reconciliation, and you can add it as a scheduler, saying that use your skill every week. And the skill will have details about how do I access Zoho books, how do I fetch the information, how do you do reconciliation, etc. It will be part of that skill. I think these are like probably independent concepts you can use with each other. Complementary mostly. Deepak Rao asks, how can you show how to create it use on Copilot? It's the same. I don't have access to GitHub Copilot, unfortunately, but it should be the same. Just try the same process and it should just work. If you have any question, just like drop a message in the WhatsApp group and we can actually respond to it. But unfortunately, I can't do it right now. Vishwadeep, how do you architect your skills? Let's say there is a new project. Now, how do you optimize? How many skills to be created? How many work lines, etc.? Skills for max optimization. How do you cascade skills prioritize? It's actually a very, very good question. Today, it is mostly what I call through iterations. So typically for me to fine tune and freeze a skill, it takes about a month, where I do like 4 or 5 iterations, right? So probably I will create a skill after like 2 times of doing the same job. And there are often errors. And when I run the 3rd time, I see that there are things that I need to fix. So there is a lot of back and forth. And one day that back and forth becomes too much. I get like super frustrated because of how bloated it has become. Then I sit again for like half a day, try to instruct and break it down into, like whatever structure that I actually want. And it comes from that experience. So there is no particular framework. It is basically iterations is how things actually work today. But once you kind of go through that activity within a month, I hardly ever go back to it because it is more or less done. The only thing I do is end of the month, try to do a review and see if something needs to be updated. Okay, Samira asks, how might one use skills for design and prototyping? Oh, that's lovely, actually. Says defining styles or animation patterns or maybe even a brand kit. Oh, this is actually quite great question. So all of my designs, all of my websites, content pieces, everything is actually done through skills, right? So one of the things you can actually do is you take your existing either design guidelines in Figma or you have a website that you've already created, etc. Just give it to an LLM saying that, hey, can you create a brand guideline? Right? And there are different types of brand guidelines. You can have technical guidelines like product guidelines or like just like pure brand level. A lot of these things you can actually do. So you do the iteration and figure out what does the entire brand guideline actually looks like. Okay. Now then create a skill file saying that what is a task? Let's say you want to create a social media asset. What is a brand guideline? Which you can just say this is where the brand guidelines is present. Give access to the file, and then you have the rest of instructions in the file. So that is a good way to do this. And LMs are actually very, very good at following brand guidelines to build designs, because a lot of them focusing on creating good designs in the market. So that will also work. There are some websites also which have come up where you can give the URL of your website and they'll create the entire brand guidelines for you, right? You can explore those. Priyanka asks, set up a design system using Claude. Oh, okay. She has answered those questions. Perfect. Cool. All right. So seems like there are no more questions. So if you have any questions, we'll take another 5 minutes. You can unmute yourself and ask. I hope this session has been useful, folks. What other things have you all used skills for? Almost all my work actually happens via this. So you can check out AppliedAI Club. That website is 100% done by what do you call AI. Then we create blog posts across multiple domains. A lot of work actually happens over there. The deck for what I showed you here, the event invites that you actually see on LinkedIn and Luma, the video that comes out of this particular conversation will go through an editing process that also is via skill, right? So there is a multiple things that actually happens, like extracting transcripts, editing them, creating a what do you call chapters, etc. So a lot of those things actually happen. Nirmal, can we say skills as another way of giving prompts? So yeah, very same prompts only, but it's just like repeatable. When things repeat, when you do it the second time or the third time, then makes sense to have a skill. So, and skills are basically instruction files. How you would provide instructions to your employee or a subordinate is how you should think about skills. But since that subordinate is AI, your instructions have to be very, very specific. You have to write like better documentations is what I would actually say.
So
Okay.
Bala, one question, like we've come a long way from, creating, let's say, n8n workflows to things getting like autonomous agents right now, like things getting done by the agents themselves. So where do you think this is going in terms of all these personal workflows that we have created over the past year? Do you think that these tools are becoming more and more to a point where it's just, conscious enough to learn all of these things? Like, for instance, for Copilot, right? Like the MS Copilot, not the GitHub Copilot, it doesn't need to have skills stored. It just remembers if you just tell it, this is a skill, this is a skill that you would use for this repeatable process. So are we going there where we don't have to have these personal workflows anymore, and then it's going to reach that point where it just works with you so constantly that it just knows what to do?
It is almost there, to be frank, which is a very, very scary situation. Probably we need to have. We've had some sessions in the past talking only about it. Probably we'll have more. So my personal view is that so LLM can actually follow these instructions and like history of what you have actually done really, really well. The problem is context engineering, which is where we still haven't cracked it yet. A lot of companies are working on it. Memory is something that is not working still, because you can keep adding things to memory, but it still doesn't fully understand how do you identify the right information in memory at any point in time and use it, because it could have so many things, right? So there are different people working on different things, but it's just a matter of time. Once that gets cracked, to a large extent, my personal workflows, I have actually structured it that way, right? So it always remembers what I have actually done in the past, and it is able to reason and find its way through what is it I actually want without me specifically providing an instruction, even in a completely new conversation. But that took like 6 months of effort of fine tuning and making things happen. I think it's just a matter of time. One of the things we'll cover in 2 weeks, the reason why I wanted to do this call right now is because in 2 weeks, we have a deeper session on how building software products is completely changing, where people no longer write code, but use only text files, skill files, right? A good example is what Claude has created with their finance agents, which is the first time I actually noticed to that extent. This was about 3-4 weeks ago. And I saw that it completely changed my perspective on like future of software. It comes with this entire concept of thin harness and thick skills. So thin harness is basically the code that you actually see, which developers usually write, is very, very less. And the instruction files, which is just like a simple text file, which anybody can write. Like you don't need to be a developer to kind of write those instructions. So that instructions are becoming like really thick. That means you don't need to be a developer to build software to solve. Software is a way of like solving the problems that we actually have, and software kind of like started bloating quite a bit. Now, what we see is specific process instructions, how well you're able to instruct an LLM just by using text is becoming a lot more important than building software. So that is one of the big takeaways that I am also seeing. And a lot of products that we are building for enterprises right now at an enterprise scale level, we're using the same phenomena, which is focus very, very less on writing code and like the normal, what we call engineering, and focus a lot more on providing instructions, right? Now, when that comes into picture, so the question is what happens to all the existing softwares which are built with code? I wouldn't ideally need it. So it opens up into some interesting points on how this world is actually going. It is definitely changing very, very fast, and it is going to change much faster. We just have to, play the game and ride along. See, the one thing that I recommend everybody to do is be part of this game. Like if you think that you can wait it out and play the game later, not play the game, then it is going to be very, very hard. Like since you're part of this meeting, I'm sure that you will be much ahead of like most of the folks in the world. But you need to play this game. You need to understand how these AI systems actually work, how this entire industry is actually changing, to kind of like, to do better in your career is what I would actually say. I know a little bit of Gyan, but it just came out. Sorry about all of that. But yeah. Okay, there are a couple of other questions. How can one assess token management and also safety guardrails? Any thoughts? So, Mamta, I think the safety guardrail part is very important. I personally don't expose any of my emails or calendars. The calendar I connected now also is a dummy calendar, so it doesn't matter to LLMs because there are some legitimate safety concerns. You need to be very, very sure of what is that you allow it to access. If you allow it to access any tool, you make sure that it only has read access, etc. So a lot of these things you should do by yourself. And again, talk to your firms, your companies, and understand what are the security policies, what LLMs to use, not to use, etc. Right? So that is important. In terms of token management, I would highly recommend try to use as much tokens as possible right now. I would recommend that use the best models and try to maximize your usage of all of these best models so that you learn. The most important part is learning this very fast, right? Because what I am personally seeing is every month, the ability for me to do more things is actually become much, much easier. And this is only because you keep doing a lot of work, which is what you call, which gets outdated very, very soon. So the way we do our work is actually getting outdated much faster. And you will only know that if you do more of that work with AI, right? So don't worry about token management right now. Try to spend as much as possible. I'm sure it is definitely worth it. It is worth spending that like kind of like money. If you are getting paid by a corporate, that is okay. Like that's like the best deal. But even if you have to personally spend this on Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, I think you should just go ahead and spend the token and work with the best models as much as possible. And once you work with it enough, then you'll understand in what are the scenarios I don't have to use the best models. And let that learning come automatically naturally for you. Don't try to optimize for cost right now. Even if you're constrained, that is okay, right? So you definitely have to spend as much tokens as possible.
On the guardrails piece, I have a follow-up, Bala, if I can quickly, especially when I'm using it in my personal laptop and not the office laptop. Do you have any sessions that you have done on guardrails, guidelines, or do you have any documentation that is good enough to kind of get started as?
We have not specifically focused on it. We've covered this, hey, don't connect your personal data, etc., whatever. That's what we have done. We actually have one session planned with a security researcher who works for an Australian bank. He's going to come and talk specifically about this topic. We'll do it in a few weeks. The timeline is not still decided, but we'll do it in a few weeks. See, one other thing is that don't share a lot of personal information. Somebody in my family actually does quite a bit to fraud. I keep telling them like, please don't do it. Just know they are still LLMs. They still manipulate quite a bit. They try to please you as much as possible. So just be very, very careful.
Sure. Thanks.
Sure. Yashveer has said, I've created a workflow that every day in the morning, Claude checks my LinkedIn and gives me a summary of all the LinkedIn invites. And then must be getting a lot of LinkedIn invites. And then select, unselect from the prompt box. Accordingly, it accepts, rejects the invites. It also sends birthday wishes to every. Oh, this is a lovely thing. Birthday wishes every day to everyone in my network who has birthday today. This took a while to be foolproof. And once this was done, I got the entire automation to be saved as MD file. This is a skill I created. I think you did. This, Yashvir, I would love if you can showcase this. I personally would like to use this on a daily basis. This is really, really great.
Sure, Bala, happy to do that. Yeah, I can show it to you.
Yeah, that would be lovely actually. So we can even set up a session, even if you can like take us through that half an hour. I think it'd be useful for everyone.
Sure.
Super. Ashok, for everyone here, if you're using GitHub, corporate GitHub Copilot, how many premium requests does it organize? Oh, sorry, I can't help with this. Awesome. I think we are at time. I'm glad to see so many of you joined and hope this was actually helpful. So we do more of these. So we've not been very regular this year, but we try to do more of these sessions on a Saturday basis. If you want to see historical sessions, go to our YouTube, check it out. All the sessions are free. And if you're interested in being part of our WhatsApp group where a lot of these conversations happen, so we try to keep it high signal, low noise. And if you are interested in being part of it, please join.
Bala, quick question before we log off. So basically, when you said that we need to maintain certain guardrails in terms of not connecting our personal things with these workflows and ensuring it is not being accessible. So when the LinkedIn thing which Yashvi mentioned right now, so would you recommend doing such things or would you not recommend? Like, does that also, because that also falls under the guardrail part?
Yeah, see, reading in those cases is, I would personally do it because it makes my life easy.
Yeah.
Writing, probably not. I wouldn't allow LLM to post without my approval. So
Right.
there are some cases where we create social media content as part of our firm, but the content actually comes to a central place where I review it and I click on approve. There is always a human in the loop. Right? So that's what I follow right now. And you can't be like, I know even reading is not very secure. There are a lot of problems with that also. But then you're not playing the game.
Yes, that's one
Unfortunately,
of the
it's a very
misconceptions.
fine balance, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
just to add to that, Bala, in this case, this specific LinkedIn automation, I have ensured that I don't let it automatically accept or automatically send messages. I still approve that, whom you should accept, whom you should reject, and whom all you should send the message, right? If somebody have already, in fact, I've done the same automation on WhatsApp also, right? People who are on contact list, they have my, birthdays. I have this, weird habit of wishing people because it's a way to connect, once a year. So it, the final decision is still, I've kept it with me and not let it automatically send, because then it can, sometime it double, the earlier it was breaking at like sometime it will double send, right? Duplicate messages, etc., which doesn't look, and it appears to the other person that it's, some AI at work. So, but all of that got sorted. So the point is that, yeah, I don't let it do it on its own, but I still take the final decision is with me to whom to send and whom not to.
Yeah, that's the right approach.
Yeah. Thank you, Vada.